Welcome to the Best Music Podcast with Dan Spencer, where we talk about music and the methods for making music with top performers in the music industry. My name is Dan. I'll be your host, and this week's featured guest is Brockett Parsons. Brockett has played in Lady Gaga's band for 4 world tours from 2010 to present, including her iconic Super Bowl 51 2017 performance on his unique circular keyboard. I knew I was going to mess that word up. Invention, the PianoArc. He has millions of views on Instagram playing this one-of-a-kind instrument. Coming up, he won the MTV reality TV show Making His Band with P. Diddy, now known as Brother Love. Brockett is a top-shelf musician and producer with the chops and talent to back up his resume, and then some. His new collaboration with Asadi, Forever Chasing the Sun, is out now wherever you get your music, and also catch his single, Strong, Free, and Beautiful. You can follow Brockett on Instagram at Brockett Parsons. That's BROCKETT, 2 T's, PARSONS. Twitter at Brockett Parsons, and Facebook.com/Brockett Official, 2 T's. Brockett, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Wow, you were super thorough. Great job.
Did my research.
You're on it.
Well, Brockett, to start us off, here's an easy one, just to get the ball rolling. What's a piece of music or song that you've heard recently that really stood out to you?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. I think I'm in a combination of listening to new music and just sort of going back, and some music that I've loved for a long time and just kind of going back to the core of it. And I'd say what's impacted me probably most recently is Marvin Gaye's What's Going On album, because it's the 50th year. And I re-examined that, and it's just, that never dies, man.
No, it does not.
And
My
it's so
goodness.
relevant, not only with the content of its message, but also musically with just the way that it sounds and how melodic it is. It's just, you can apply all those principles to the current stuff, and it always leads you in a good direction, I think. I just love the way he flows over that, and just it just gets me in a mood to do music when I listen to that album.
Yeah, in addition to the vocal aspect of it, which is, untouchable, the production aspect of it and like the arranging and everything is just so tasteful and so well done, innovative, I think we could call it too. Well, what an incredible album to be revisiting. So when you're revisiting these tunes, what feeling is it giving you? Where is it bringing you?
It brings you back to the core of why I wanted to be a musician.
Ooh.
Because it's important to stay afloat with what's going on in today's industry to stay relevant. And I spend a lot of time doing that as well. And there's some great new music, I think. But every once in a while, I need to go back and remember the reason why I was a musician in the first place. Because I think it's you have a better job of, no matter how old you are, you have a better job of doing something that's relevant to even a younger crowd when you actually believe in it. Because a younger crowd, they still can see through fakeness sometimes. And they like it when it's real, So the best chance you have, I think, of scoring something in terms of just either being a player or producing or writing music is eventually you got to do something that you actually like doing at some point, so they feel your emotion in it.
Can you talk a little bit about what that core thing is that made you want to be a musician in the first place?
I think I just gravitate towards just beautiful sounds and a good groove. And I think I like also sometimes when singers, they're like musicians. And in that Marvin Gaye's voice, it's like another instrument, in my opinion. It just blends with everything. It's not so far out front that it just dominates everything else. In my opinion, it just like, I could listen to it over and over again. I don't get tired listening to that. So it's just a feeling, and it just reminds me of kind of growing up and stuff. I mean, that was a little bit before my time when it came out. But it's just a feeling that it gives you. Like, there's obviously the political messaging and stuff in a lot of those, that entire album, and societal ramifications of it. But it's even deeper with me in just the pure sound of it. Just, even without the words, it's just the sound of it, man. And the chords and the space. It's the space and the way that it breathes. I even went to some of his live recordings where he's playing piano. It was like in a park, and he'll just vamp out and just like play the chord for like 6 minutes. Because he's got the guts to do it, because it feels good. He doesn't have to do anything else. He knows that's the bomb. He's such a confident performer in understanding the space and being in the moment. And that's what I always want to remember, that as being, no matter what style of music we do, you got to just go for it and be in the moment and be unafraid. So that's a super inspiring album right there. I get the same feeling when I listen to David Bowie, like the song Heroes. I really like the new Bruno Mars Anderson .Paak track, Silk Sonic, Leave the Door Open. That is a really great feeling. That's super inspiring as well.
So these moments of sonic inspiration for you, it's about the sound, the feeling, the space, the groove, but that's where you can refine that. You know, when we're kids, we get into music and we're chasing a feeling, we're embodying a feeling. It just feels good to do, right? Because like otherwise, why would we sit ourselves in a practice room for 8 to 12 hours a day and do it, right? It feels good. Yeah. And I think over the years, you know, other things come into play. You've got to pay bills. You got to play a song for, you know, whoever it is that maybe doesn't vibe with you in the same way. You've got to, you know, walk dogs, like all these little things come up that can create a insulator between you and that feeling. And not you specifically, but one and that feeling.
Yeah.
And being able to have a route through life to get back to that feeling is a really beautiful thing.
It's a challenge, man, because it's true. There's a lot of pressure on us to survive, especially now. And it's hard to turn off that survival mode when you gotta, you know, when you have to pay your rent. It's hard so it can be really tricky. And there may be times where you might not be able to do it, and that's okay too, because you gotta survive. But every once in a while, to always remember, there's easier ways to make money than playing music. The real reason why I became a musician wasn't to become rich. It would be great to become rich. I want to make money. I want to be successful financially. It is important. It gives you some security and freedom. But the actual reason in life why I became a musician wasn't about the money. If money was the number one objective of my life, I would have chosen another path. Not to sound like I don't want to make money again. Like, you know, we all need it.
Yeah.
And I commend those who are successful doing so. But for me, ultimately loving what you do for the music side, to me, is the reason why I did it. So I never want to lose it completely.
So let's talk a little bit about loving what you do and being great at what you do, which you happen to be great at what you do. Let's talk a little bit about successful auditions, because clearly you've had some successful auditions to get to the places where you've gotten to. So can you talk a little bit about your process, your mind state? Number one, how to prepare for an audition?
Well, I look at it this way. I never used to like auditions, and they're usually they're not the best situation. It's usually never an ideal situation for anybody. It's not especially natural. It's not a true reflection of what it would be like to actually perform. So it's difficult. You can get really thrown off because you might not be doing something that you naturally gravitate towards in that audition. So I used to shy away from them. but it's true. I had 2 auditions pretty close to each other, one for Diddy and then one for Gaga, where I essentially won both of them, right? And I'd say the commonality with it, and I had an audition for Jay-Z's band before that, like a year or 2 before that. I didn't get that particular gig, but I know I made a good impression with the person running the audition. He told me, like, he said, you might not get this gig, but you're like right there. Like what you did at the audition was really good. And he was very specific with what I did that he was impressed by. So I still feel like that was a good learning experience, and I did well at that audition as well.
Brockett, do you mind sharing what he was specifically impressed with?
Well, it was a gentleman, rest in peace, it was a gentleman who had a tremendous amount of respect in New York City named Ron Grant, who ran that audition. Okay. And he was responsible for a lot of gigs in New York City, for R&B and hip hop. And he passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. Big loss, but he was a substantial figure in New York City. Okay. And so it was audition for Jay-Z. And essentially, we're in a room with like 30 or 40 people. It's just musicians. Okay. And we're all watching each other play. It's very intimidating. Almost nobody's talking to each other, essentially. And usually, like a lot of these guys who are there probably know now. They're like, everybody is a cool guy. Everybody's a good person.
To be clear, Brockett, are you in a room with 40 other key players that you're auditioning against, or it's like
I would say all instruments.
Oh, okay.
So maybe there's like 20 drummers there, and there's 10 keyboard players or something. But most of the guys that are there, how to connect or somebody. I had a personal friend who connected me with the audition. Another keyboard player was super cool with me, and he was fortunate enough to. It's like we're playing the same instrument, but he was so cool that he said, "Man, who cares who gets it? Let's just one of us get it." You know what I mean? He had a good spirit with it. Anyway, so the specific thing that I think I did well at that audition was when it came time for me to play, it was like he put on like a deep cut from one of his older albums, okay? And it was like definitely was a sample-based track, right? It was like a weird piano sound, but it was like messed with, like an SB 1200 or whatever. Who produced it, right? It's a little bit out of tune, a little detuned. It was looped, not especially natural to play, right? So when it came time for me to play, there's like a motif setup, okay? I go on the Yamaha motif, and I actually asked a question to the guy running the audition, and I say, "If you don't mind, I'd like to ask one question." And he's like, "Sure." I said, "Are you going for the record to be exactly like the record, or do you want us to enhance it and show you some things?" He goes, "Play it just like the record." Now, the key, though, is he goes, "Thank you for asking, though." Nobody else asked in the room. I immediately gained his respect. He already felt that I was considerate. So then he was open-minded. Emotions mean a lot. The body language, everything. You can throw the vibe off if you appear too cocky. Or perhaps if you're really cocky but very confident, maybe your vibe is great. You don't know. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's different. So you got to try to play the room and sort of figure out and kind of like interpret like the situation a little bit.
Quick question for you. So you're playing this deep cut. Is this a deep cut that they're playing for the room like one time for you guys to get the idea? Or they're just throwing you up and saying, they're just like essentially calling a tune, calling a number, and then you're getting up and playing?
So what he did is he put the record on. He played it. He goes, "This is what you guys are going to play." And he just basically played it. And it was sort of unclear. It's like, how much time do we have to learn it? He was kind of like, "You guys got this?" It's like, obviously it looks more impressive the faster you can get it.
Yes.
But I said to him, the reason I said to him, "Do you want us to play this exactly like the record?" He goes, "Yes, play it exact." And then I said something to him like, "Is it okay if I listen to it a couple of times? Because I'd like to try to get the sound." He goes, "Absolutely." So I'm not a great sound designer, but I just kind of like took a preset and messed with it just a little bit, tweaked it slightly with a little bit of EQ, and just sort of tried to simulate the best that I could the sound. And like, he took me aside. He said, "You're the only one in the room who tried to do that." He goes, "We can work together in the future." So he said there was a reason why, like, it was some kind of thing beyond my control as to maybe why the actual gig didn't happen or whatever, but that always goes down, right? The fact of the matter is I made a strong impression with the guy. And then my confidence built for the next audition because I knew I hit that audition pretty hard.
So Brockett, is the takeaway from your experience to, number one, be your authentic self, because in that moment you're being your authentic self. You're not trying to project some cockiness. Your authentic self is
Absolutely,
to be considerate. And then on top of that, you weren't afraid to take the time and make the space to make sure that what you were contributing to the music was going to be worthwhile.
That's what I try to do. It's tricky, right? Because sometimes if you're running an audition and you're sitting there all day and you're listening to like 50 or 60 people, you never know. The guy might be getting tired. He might be in a bad mood, or the guy or girl or whatever, like who's ever running the audition, man or woman, right? And so you got to take their perspective in mind and try to be considerate of where they're coming from, yet still have your own personality shine through. Because if you're not yourself and you don't show who you truly are, and you try to do something just to sort of placate people that you're particularly not good at, then you're not bringing your strong self out. So I guess you just hit something that I didn't even realize. I think one of the things that it's done has worked for me is being unafraid to try to actually figure out what's going on in the situation. What is this? What are we trying to do? Yet at the same time, not talking too much. You ask too many questions and give too much importance to yourself, then you can just get the guy can get upset and be like, "Yo, why are you asking so many questions? Like, there's 50 guys here." So I try to ask the question quickly and clearly so that it was easy for him to process it without much effort.
And respectfully. It's all about the approach too, right? You approached it in the right way. You weren't like, "Hey man, like, what's the deal?" You said it respectfully and humbly, just trying to get information to better inform your performance.
Right. And I guess I was fortunate in that one that it was the right vibe. But I've made mistakes too. You could ask, maybe the guy's not in the mood to hear a question if you ask too many questions. Sometimes they just want to be like, "Yo, man, just play." And if they're getting that vibe too, you got to try to feel that vibe. Okay, this is what this is. I'm just going to speak with my playing and just do it. You know, every situation is different. But sometimes it is, you know, again, at the end of the day, the other person that's listening to you is a human being. So really, it's a human connection. It's kind of like the most important thing. That's how people get gigs. Is you got to connect with the people somehow. And if they don't know who you are, if you can do something where they're like, "Yeah, that guy's all right. Okay, I like the way that guy's thinking." Then he's open. Then they are open-minded to at least hearing it. But if you're already making them mad before you even start playing, it's like you might be done already. But then when you're sitting there and it's like they're looking at their phone while you're playing, not listening to you, get another phone call coming in and they blow you off. That can happen if you do something that, you like kind of throws the vibe off. So just got to try to do the best that you can, assess the situation, but be yourself. Figure out a way to show them what you're naturally good at yourself in some way. You know, and if it's not right for the gig, it's okay. But at least they know who you truly are.
So you have this, what I would call a net successful audition for Jay-Z. You didn't get the gig, but you learned a whole heck of a lot, which then informed your future auditions. And so then you go and you audition for the MTV show P. Diddy. And by the way, there's a trailer out there on YouTube. I don't know if you know about it, where you can actually see your audition. Someone cut it out, and your audition. I think your audition is on YouTube. You play this sort of like classical infused, on the edge of R&B, hip hop thing. You know, maybe almost like a precursor to what your music was going to turn into later in your career. But
I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually the song "All This Love" by DeBarge.
Oh, cool.
And so, essentially, what happened with that is the music director at the time. We had gone through a series of auditions before getting to that point.
I see.
So, like initially, it was a huge open call in 4 different cities. So there were literally like thousands who auditioned in total. I don't know how many actual keyboard players auditioned, but it's probably a lot. And so during that audition that is floating around, that's actually after we're actually in LA.
Huh.
And that's like the finalists of each city to get on the show have already been selected. So it's about maybe 60 or 70 people in that room, and they have to cut it down to like 40 to actually get on the show. So the music directors are trying to present different combinations of musicians playing together in front of Diddy so that he can kind of get a good idea of who he likes. So I think because there was so much going on, it was kind of tricky to sort of hear everybody's individual parts. And I think that I had made a pretty good impression up until that point for similar reasons: work ethic, trying to stay humble. The music directors were fortunate enough. They liked me enough, so they wanted Diddy to actually be able to hear me. So he just said, "Yo, Brockett, just play by yourself right now." So literally on the spot, band cuts out, and I got to play. So right there is like a zone of just somebody points to you and goes, "Play," in front of Diddy. And that's what happened.
That's amazing. And they caught it on camera too. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, yeah, you know, and sometimes it's not exactly perfect what comes out, but as long as the vibe is right, that's the most important. I mean, that clip, I've seen it, and like technically I'm playing stuff that I like hate. You know what I mean? Like slappy or whatever. It didn't matter though, because the vibe was at the moment, and it did the job. So I'm trying to I'm not afraid just to go for it. And if you make some mistakes, so what? Music is about emotion.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a little cleaner. I would like to get a little cleaner though. So you know.
We can get the Diddy Auditions remix where Brockett goes back. the Diddy Auditions revisited with Brockett.
I mean, it's true. Like when you're still got to practice to get your chops up, because that enables you to. That gives you more tools to express your emotion when you have more at your fingertips, and you have a larger palette to work with.
So you have this successful audition with Diddy. You essentially win the game. You win the show. And then can you talk a little bit about what it was like getting the call to audition for Gaga and what your process was around that?
Well, it was a similar time. I was selected as a winner of the Diddy show. And then we're sort of in limbo a little bit. We weren't really sure if we're going to go on tour or not. But while I was sort of trying to, because I think a lot of it was dependent upon Diddy and the direction of his album. So I think once he got in the trenches of actually doing his recording, he kind of went in a different direction anyway. So I wasn't really sure, because like technically, if you went on tour, I had to go with it, because it was like part of the show arrangement, right? But it was looking like it probably wasn't going to happen. So I got the opportunity to audition for Gaga, and it was a similar thing. Like, without talking too specifically about the actual audition, because it's a private thing or whatever. I would say I just I just tried to play some styles of music that I felt I was pretty good at and sort of infuse that. I essentially played one of her songs and just tried to sort of mix in uh, some classical music with it, and some hip hop elements, which is what I've been doing in New York for so long. And people had told me that that was a sound that worked well for me. So people were telling me, yo, whenever you audition, you got to slip that in there somehow. So I try to do that, just try to be myself. And one thing that I would say is that the casting directors of that audition put out a notice. I don't know who was responsible, but the emphasis was on a kind of a young vibe.
Mm.
And it was, if you were to read the audition flyer, it said looking for players between the ages of 18 to 26. I was not that age. Even then, I was old. Okay. I went anyway. I got the gig. Sometimes don't believe some of those things. That'd be a real easy reason to go, man, I'm too old for that. I'm not even going to show up. I could have talked myself out of doing 4 world tours and playing a Super Bowl because I looked at an audition requirement saying that I was too old and didn't show up.
Man.
So you got to also keep things in perspective. If you can actually if you can get through that, it's all about the personal relationship and the impact. And I had a good audition, and the rest is history.
The rest is history indeed. Can you talk a little bit about that mindset, and also just in general, when you're showing up for auditions, a lot of times people have an idea of what they think they want, but when what they actually want shows up in front of them, it's like an aha moment. So it's like a casting director thinks they're looking for 18 to 26. They have this very clear vision in their head of what the visuals look like, of what everything looks like. Brockett shows up, blows the audition out of the water, and is like, oh, this is actually what I wanted. Can you talk a little bit about not just the sort of 90% of success is showing up, but then also, well, I mean, did you take any steps? Like, did you get a haircut? Did you get specific clothes that you put on? Or was it really that moment of, I'm being true to myself and I'm going to show up for this audition?
I did prepare a little bit. I did have a plan. There was some instructions like, hey, learn some of her music, right? So I checked out some music. I learned a couple of songs. And then I did work out. I did practice. This is what I did. I wanted to be prepared in case they said, just play. And it was open-ended. I had something what I knew I was going to do. It's exactly what happened. I got the freedom to play by myself, whatever I wanted. So it was good that I prepared. I prepared the night before and did it like I was at the audition a few times, just in case. I wasn't sure whether I would have that opportunity. Maybe they'd throw something at me or whatever. But I wanted to at least be ready. You know what I'm saying? And, I did think about the clothing thing because at that time, she, and still, like, this is a fashion icon, right?
That she is, and iconic.
So I was thinking to myself, damn, what am I going to do? I didn't feel like the most fashion conscious person at the time, So I'll say 2 things that I'll say. Through my career, I've played a lot of R&B music. I played some jazz. But I didn't grow up playing in church. The foundation of a lot of that stuff. It's not like I've been playing Stevie Wonder tunes since I was 7. I feel pretty confident playing that kind of thing. And I love it. But there's guys who grew up with it, right? Doesn't mean I want to shy away from a competition. I had to on the Diddy show. I had to play hip hop. That's what it was. But I made the decision for the first time. In other words, I was always, I played with Donell Jones in my career, R&B guy. I played on some hip hop records, and I've made my living playing a lot of R&B. But I always felt like I was kind of playing catch up a little bit, like always wondering if I'm quite funky enough to be in this band. You know what I mean? Do I really have the harmonic vocabulary? Do I have like just the background to? Am I soulful enough?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm. Big time.
Constant, and it's a good thing to always keep yourself in check because you always want to get better.
Mm.
Always be like, there's always like some 15-year-old kid who's like awesome, right? Who's just dope. But in this case, for the first time in my career, I said, you know what? I'm not going to try to compete on playing, say, Ribbon in the Sky or something. So I said, I grew up in Summit, New Jersey, and my friends listen to punk rock. And I blew that stuff off when I was a kid, but it's in my blood because I heard it so much from the people that I hung out with. And I saw, in fact, the Ramones live when I was in college.
Whoa.
And I've grown to appreciate that stuff more as I've gotten older, the rawness of it. So I wore a Ramones t-shirt to the audition. And that's it. A lot of people were on really crazy stuff. I just tried to look decent and wore a Ramones t-shirt.
Wow.
And then just played what I was, and just played what I wanted to play, and just let them know who I was as a person. That's it.
And can you talk a little bit about how you let them know who you were as a person, or is that sort of NDA? You can't talk about that?
Well, I think in all respect, I'd like maybe, without getting real specific in general about it, it was a good day. I was well respected. Everybody had a great vibe.
Mm. And
what I would say is, I came in there and I tried to ask some questions to sort of figure out what was going down and give them a taste of my own personality. There needs to be an emotional connection. The person in the room needs to go, man, I want that person.
Well, in addition to I want that person, I can see touring with this person around
Yes.
the world for 300 stadium shows. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're just in the band, you're going to be in contact with this person. You want a personality fit on some level, right?
You can't go to the audition and just try to don't try to fit in.
Yeah.
You got to make a statement. It doesn't mean blow off the instructions that are given to you and play your position. Because again, it's about the artist. So you want to show them that you're a good team player, but you got to show some fire. I mean, they're playing stadiums and arenas.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to envision you in front of 20,000 people. So I played, even though it's a small room, I played as if I was playing in front of 20,000 people. I mean, you're talking to somebody that when I played Coachella with her in 2017, there was a time when she went out and played the piano by herself and breaks it down and sings. And there's 100,000 people outside at Coachella as a headliner. The rowdiest crowd. Complete silence, like a pin can drop. Why? Because her stage presence is so powerful. And timing is so just innate. One of the literally all-time performance greats. So when you're auditioning for somebody like that, you got to show that you're bringing something to the table, and that you can hold your own up there, not just musically, but just with your vibe and power and emotion that you can bring to the equation. You got to be special. And I used to shy away from being different, looking a little weird or whatever. Yeah, that's worked in my favor now.
I think another takeaway just from you talking about your audition experience is really to embrace everything that is you.
Yeah.
I was just talking to an old professor of mine, Bill Mooring, bass player, and we were talking about how everything that you are comes out in the music. It's not
Yeah.
just your practicing. It's not just the metronome, because like you could play with a metronome all day, but that doesn't guarantee you have a feel. It's like, yeah, set metronome and do something a la Jay Dilla. Like you understand where I'm going with this. It's like
Yeah, totally.
it's the sum total of your outlook, your psyche, your thoughts, your habits, the way you treat other people, your state. All of that comes out in the music. And to deny any part of that is to be inauthentic in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're going into those auditions, you're opening the floodgates. Everything you're playing with the emotion, you're playing with the fire, you're playing with the stage presence. Everything that makes you, you're putting out there on the table.
Yeah. So I think, usually by the time you get to an audition, you've been being a musician for a long time, and it's very likely that you have a certain skill set to even get to the audition. So believe in that skill set and be confident in who you are. You might not get the gig, but you allow yourself to get the gig if you're the right person for the gig. They'll see who you truly are. Because again, you got to be special somehow. So you can't try to, like, if a dude goes like, you hear somebody talking, or like, don't let anybody else that's there throw you off. Nobody knows who's going to get this. Nobody really knows anything. You know what I'm saying? It's like completely like unpredictable. So don't expect to get the gig. That's at least my feeling is, like, don't like expect to get the gig, but just show them who you really are, and you'll get it. If it's the right gig for you, you'll get it. And if not, well, you showed who you really are.
I think it's important to clarify for non-musicians and maybe music students, people who are into the first maybe year or two of playing, that the level of practicing and skill that it takes to get to a point where, for example, you're showing up for the Diddy audition and they're playing a song for you one time, maybe two times, maybe three times. And then from hearing that, you have the aural, AURAL, the aural skills to just, what's happening and then you play it. Or to get to the point where you can hear a song and then on your instrument, you can envision in your mind's eye what's going to happen. That type of thing doesn't happen overnight, and it's a testament to your work ethic over the years that you've been playing that you even got to that point in the first place.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work. Pretty much once you get to say a big pop gig, there's always exceptions, but in general, almost everybody in those groups is really fast in their instrument in terms of, like, being able to learn a song quickly. So you might be playing a part that might appear to not be technically difficult, but what you don't see is that maybe that person had to learn that tune and then had to, like, change the form 20 minutes before they go on national television and be able to process that. And it takes a certain amount of comfort on your instrument to be able to do that. So really, when you're playing certain pop music that, it might not have a ton of chord changes or whatever, just to execute that with the right feel, these pop artists can get anybody in the world to play that. It's good to be overqualified for it. It's like you're really, really comfortable. So, man, these drummers that play these gigs, these guys are so good. They're so precise. They're so good at playing with click tracks and drum machines. The time's immaculate. And when they do a fill, they explode in that fill with power, the right sound. Drummers in today's game that have to play these pop gigs, they're really, really unbelievable musicians, in my opinion.
I think it's very easy to come to it from a perspective of, listen, it's not giants, it's not even autumn leaves. I mean, like in terms of chord changes, essentially you're for the most of the time 4 chords and whatever. And obviously that's a generalization, so don't string me up on YouTube, everyone listening. But you get the idea. It's a generalization. But the level that you're at to create the space to be able to adapt within that art form is not a trivial thing. Like you said, to have someone change the form up on you 20 minutes before you play. And that's not a bad thing. That's a common thing. That happens all the time in all sorts of musical arenas. You've been practicing something some way, and then someone walks into the room and says, well, guess what, guys? We're not playing measures 4 and 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, we're on. And
we need to cut 30 seconds because
right. Yeah.
If, you know what I'm saying? We got to cut 30 seconds for the arrangement.
Yeah, exactly.
So it might not even be, the music director is forced to try to make an edit they were not expecting to do and make it sound musical quickly. So it needs musicians that can really be like, it's a lot easier for the music director. The music director can just say, guys, we're taking those 8 bars out here. There's no bridge. Got it? And when you're like, yeah, I got it, that music director is comfortable with you performing with them. It's really, you know, I mean, there's guys way better at this than me when it comes to learning stuff quickly and, you know, really catching this pop music world. It's these guys, there's really good people out here. You know what I mean? You got to like really prepare and work hard. You know, I've worked really hard. Like that ear that you're talking about, I'm not some guy who was born with perfect pitch. I'm not one of those guys that could hear anything. So my ear's decent now, but I had to work on it.
I think maybe based off of what you said, we could talk about this for a moment. And it really comes down to, yeah, there's always going to be someone out there better than you at something. Like you said, like right now we could go on Instagram and find a 15-year-old who plays faster than both of us on every instrument under the sun. We go on Instagram right now, we probably find an 8-year-old who's got the groove of like a 55-year-old person who's been playing R&B their whole life. Like there's always someone out there who's younger, who's got some spark of something, who's got some specialty, something comes easy to them, perfect pitch, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's always someone out there. But in the vein of staying true to ourselves, it's not about comparing yourself to them. While sometimes it's fun to get inspired by them, it's not a comparison game. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think you said it extremely well. I don't even think I could say it better than how you said it, man. It's like, I think it's good to be aware of the virtuosity that is out there. But you could literally like lose yourself in trying to worry about that too much. You know, at the end of the day, you just got to be confident that you're bringing something to the table and work on that. And I mean, just think about it. It's just the law of averages. In a planet of 7 billion people, there's going to be a couple of virtuosos out there. There always were. It's just that you didn't see them on YouTube. Because now the entire world has access to it. So, you know, some guy in like a village in South America who happens to be just like a complete monster. You might not even seen that dude before YouTube, but now you're seeing them all. And so, just got to keep it in perspective. You can't judge yourself based off of a genius. Like if you're not a genius, you're nothing. You know. And
I think it ties back.
That's not true.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Some of the great jazz players that we look up to. Some were geniuses. Some had to spend a little more time learning.
And some, even though they were geniuses, continued to learn for their whole lives to push the art form forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I use the word genius, I guess I'm referring to it may have come easier for some than others. Not every great contributor to the jazz piano tradition has technique like Art Tatum or Oscar Peterson. Like, those guys are special when it comes to that. Well, what if Bill Evans didn't want to play because
right.
he was like bugged out by Oscar Peterson?
Imagine.
Not that Bill Evans didn't have great technique, also he did. But you know what I'm saying? It was like,
it's a different thing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's what if Miles like gave up playing the trumpet because he felt like he wasn't as good as Dizzy?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a different it's a different universe. It's a different paradigm.
So he's following in the footsteps of one of the greatest technicians of bebop with fantastic technique and speed. And this is, I'm just paraphrasing what I believe I've heard from so many different people and what I've read. If I don't have it completely correct, I still think I have the vibe is right in that. Like, I think that's just the best example for all of us. In that Miles Davis could have easily, if he had like if he was like some emotional guy who like saw the level of range and speed and power that Dizzy had, emulated it, and was really good but didn't quite get there, instead of obsessing to try to get there, he was like, you know what? I got something that none of these other guys have, though. I mean, this is about making music, and I see something. I see a direction. That's already been done. There's already been a Dizzy. Okay? It doesn't matter if I'm not, playing those runs quite like that. I see something else. And he was confident enough to do it. And you could even make the argument that he may have had a broader impact on the scope of 20th century music than even Dizzy. I don't know. That's a crazy debate, but it's certainly comparable.
I mean, he is easily more worldwide recognized with one word, Miles. You go anywhere in the world where people know jazz, you say Miles, they know who you're talking about. Obviously, if you say Dizzy too, they know who you're talking about too, but there's this, I agree, there's this impact. And I think what's really important within that example to pull out of it is for people who are embarking on learning their instrument, or they've been playing, or they're having a moment of doubt, it's not about being as fast as the next person. It's not about being as technically proficient. That person figured out their thing and is doing great at their thing. Everyone's got to figure out for themselves what their thing is. And this brings us right back to being true to yourself, because it's an extension of being true to yourself, is acknowledging, accepting, embracing, and then flourishing within that thing that makes you uniquely you.
I agree. Now, one thing I would like to elaborate on with that one just a little bit is some people are naturally gravitate towards, they're just very gifted technically. They just have a gift for motion, and it just translates extremely well. If a person enjoys that and naturally gravitates towards that, that's also beauty also. So I guess what I'm saying is, when you hear somebody who might be just absolutely phenomenal, let's say you're not the most technical guy in the world, it doesn't mean that guy with that incredible gift is not taking anything away from that person's gift, because they're still making a musical statement, but in their own way.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes I hear statements that might say, I don't like a lot of notes. I don't like too many notes. I keep it simple. I think there's room for complexity and simplicity in music, depending on what your personality is and who you are. Jocko was extremely complex, and he was extremely musical. Chick Corea was very complex, but he's so musical. Maybe Bill Evans left a little more space, but he's still super musical. Miles left some more space at times. But they all just were true to who they really were. and followed up with intensity and didn't really worry about what other people said for a while.
Man.
What if Monk had held his technical standards up to our Tatum? You know what I'm saying? He had the confidence. He knew he was doing something. I mean, I don't know what the guy's personality was, but I'm just assuming that he was very focused on delivering his vision to the world. And so with us, we always got to remember that the true greats, they just did what they wanted to do at some point.
And I think the key part of that too, well, I shouldn't say the key, but another part of that too is what you just said, is they pursued it relentlessly, figured out what they were good at, figured out who they really were, and then just like went for it. And it's that combination of the work ethic and then that sort of self-realization, truthfulness that can sort of make the magic happen. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Amazing.
And I'm still searching for it.
Aren't we all, sort of?
Yeah.
I mean, like, even guys like Miles, like, you look at his discography and you look at the journey, the sonic journey, and you can see he's trying out new things. Like,
Sure.
You listen to Kinda Blue, it's a thing. You listen to Sketches of Spain, it's a thing. You listen to Water Babies, it's a thing.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not that they found the one single thing they were good at and then they were milking it for all it was worth. It's that they found an arena, a space to play in, and then experimented within that.
I mean, what if Miles, for like the next 20 years, was obsessing over making sure that his runs, when he played with Charlie Parker, was equally as proficient and technical as Dizzy before him? And we wouldn't have those modal chords in the beginning of Kind of Blue. Wouldn't even exist. The greatest selling acoustic jazz album of all time. So sometimes you never know what the future holds if you believe in yourself. I never would have even imagined that I would be playing Super Bowl when I'm like playing in a wedding band somewhere in like Brooklyn, playing Elvis tunes.
Yeah.
Not to knock Elvis tunes. I learned a lot in that band too. You know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. So, speaking of pursuing a path with intensity, I think is the word you used. Could you talk a little bit about the path that brought us to the Brockettship, which is also known as the PianoArc, which you co-created?
You're talking about the instrument or the album?
So Brockettship, the album, I also saw that Brockettship was a term you used to refer to the PianoArc. You called the PianoArc the Brockettship.
Yeah.
All right, I've got my terms right.
Sure. So, I mean, I guess, are you asking about the actual keyboard? Or
yes, the actual keyboard.
Okay, so basically, there was a friend of mine who played at the time in Gaga's band, and this guy's named Kareem Devlin. His name Kareem Devlin, and he was a really good showman on guitar. He had great stage presence, and was very well received. Had great moments with Gaga on stage, and just was electric in his showmanship. And he paid a lot of attention, making sure he looked good. But he had these really awesome guitars that he had custom made. Like he had this silver guitar that I don't know how much money was spent on this thing, but it was like awesome. And he's playing this guitar on the HBO special at Madison Square Garden. So anyway, it came time for the next tour, which was the Born This Way tour, which is actually, in fact, it's the 10th year anniversary of that album. So I'd like to give a shout out to Gaga and 10 years of success with Born This Way. And there's some re-releases of the album coming out right now. There's a Kylie Minogue version of the song, Marry the Night. Anyway, to get sidetracked, is on that gig 10 years ago. We're Born This Way. We're preparing for that tour. And we're all kind of talking about what our next stage rig is going to look like. And I had no clue how to look cool up there, man. I always felt like I looked kind of like lame.
Huh.
You know what I mean? I never really made the effort to be a good showman in terms of equipment.
Mm.
You know? So I talked to this guy, Kareem. I said, what do you think I could do with make my, I had some keyboards that were like, and something, a bunch of other people had already done, where you take the keyboard and like you make it sideways so you can actually see the keys.
Mm-hmm.
The dude in the band, Colin Brantley, he was doing that. And I think it goes all the way back to Sheila E. did it in the 80s. Anyway, but it was like, yo, this is like already been done now. So what am I going to do now? So he's just like, hey, man, why don't you just like make a circular keyboard? Like he's like joking, but not totally. And I was like, think about this. If I made a circular keyboard and it was all around me, I could assign a different sound to every side of the keyboard, right?
So do you have whatever 88 times 4 is? I can't do the math in my head. Do you have 88 times 4 around you?
It's actually 288 keys, and it's 3 96 note sections. So it's essentially, let me see if I can do the math right, 24 octaves.
That's fun.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to play some whale songs down in the low end and do some stuff only dogs can hear in the high end.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry for that little aside. So he says, why don't you make a circular piano?
So I called up a friend that I went to college with who's been involved in music instrument design. And I said, hey, do you think this is something that we could do? I want to make a circular keyboard. He goes, wow, it's a crazy idea. I was like, think about how we could approach that. He goes, yeah, let me think about this. This guy's name is Chuck Johnson, who lives in Massachusetts. And he's a piano player also. So he came back and he goes, I got a guy. A friend of his was a piano tuner and a piano builder. This guy named Rich Fell. He goes, this guy's willing to actually build the keys. Now we need to find a guy who actually can make this thing, get some circuit boards so it can read MIDI.
Mm.
So then he called up his friend Dave Starkey. This guy's this killer engineer in San Diego, who's already had like a bunch of patents under his own name for, in fact, making acoustic instruments read MIDI.
Whoa.
So he'd already had the circuit board technology. So he became a partner, he came on board. And then eventually Dave ended up actually building the newer keyboards himself physically as well, in combination with Chuck and some of his guys in Massachusetts. So it's really, the two of those guys became partners. And they were kind enough to allow me to stay in the mix as the person who kind of came to them initially. So we formed a company called PianoArc. But they really did, in all fairness, they're the ones who actually built it. I have no technical skill at all. But I came to them with some ideas of what I would like it to be. A controller, 3 controllers that are connected, and that reads MIDI. And so just think about it. They had to come up with different stands. How's this thing going to hold up?
Different keys.
How's it going to travel? All this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's been a long journey, and it's there's been a few different variations of it. But the variation I have now is the keyboard that I own now is what actually played on the Super Bowl.
Huh.
And I can actually break it up and move it in my car.
No way.
Yeah, I've got like this little Scion fits in.
No way.
Because it comes apart into 3 sections.
Wow.
I'm getting ready to do a video shoot on Monday for a new song on a rooftop in LA with it.
Exciting.
Yeah, that should. That's actually with my my friend Danny Asadi. He's going to help me with that.
Fantastic. And we'll definitely plug that single with Danny Asadi in a moment. I have a question for you though before we move on off of the PianoArc. Is there a reason why you wanted 96 keys as opposed to the traditional full piano size, which is 88?
My partners, they came to the conclusion after a couple of different versions that it made sense. It was actually based upon an octave model of 12 keys or 24 note sections. They wanted to make it a bit more symmetrical.
Oh, I get
So they
it.
figured, okay, they measured my arm length and like my span. It was literally like I went down to a warehouse and like, but because you got to figure out how big you're going to make this thing.
Right.
What's the circumference? Then you have to calculate the size of the keys. And there's curvature to the white keys. So they're actually curved slightly. So it's not like you could use keys from another keyboard. We made our own keys. So it was a crazy process. Anyway, but it became more efficient when they broke it down into like the first iteration actually only had 263 keys. They just kind of like measured my arm length and just kind of came up with a number of keys that would fit. But then they thought, like, let's make this. It wasn't perfectly symmetrical. It was like this. It wasn't an even amount of 12 octave all the way up. There's like one section where it's like 3 white keys next to each other.
Right.
When it connects. So it wasn't like perfectly in sync. So they were like, let's make it 288. It's an even round number. That's 24. That's 12 24 note sections for 24 octaves. And they were like, well, easy way to break that down. We could break it down any way, but let's do 3 sections of 96 notes. Actually, the new version has 4 sections of 72 notes. Same thing.
And 1 or 2 more questions there. Is the reason why you transitioned from 3 groups to 4 groups because then it gives you more immediate sound options in the moment?
The reason that they chose to do that was efficiency, because it's a little easier to move around if the sections are slightly smaller. So they figured it out where 2 of the they broke it down so now it fits into 3 custom-made cases where there's 4 keyboard sections. You put 2 keyboard sections in one case. So then you have 2 cases for the keyboards, and then stand breaks down into another case. You have 3 cases. So it's really done out of efficiency because this thing is really difficult to move around. So the 96 note section was just a little bit bigger than like your standard flight case. So the object is to be able to get this thing on a plane and be efficient. I got to say, and they rag at me all the time, but I don't blame them. You know, the techs for Gaga's crew, they had a lot to deal with an instrument that's never been made before. And, you know, it was a huge burden for them. You had to figure out how to move this thing around, and they did it. So I'm incredibly lucky that they were willing to help me on that. But it was a real curveball for them, man. But because of the process of how difficult it's been, and to see and the sacrifice that they had to make to make this thing happen, we needed to make this thing more efficient so that, you know, it's unfair to ask people to do that all the time. So we're getting better with the efficiency of moving around. Now it's pretty good.
So speaking of taking your PianoArc on world tours, touring around the world, like we mentioned earlier, you've done 4 world tours with Lady Gaga, 300 arena shows, and I'm sure that's rounding down. Can you talk a little bit about how you prepare for a world tour?
Generally speaking, you know, you have some time to prepare the music, and then you rehearse with the band. And then after you rehearse with the band for a bit, then maybe you rehearse, you know, with the artist directly. And that's just the music. And maybe the dancers come in, and you all work together. This is not just specifically for this tour. This is pretty much any big tour with any pop artist. And then once you get all the music solid and the arrangements like pretty close, then you got to do the production rehearsals where you're playing on either in an arena or maybe a soundstage where the crew is able to set up the stage to at least match something close to what it's going to be like. And once you get to that point, you don't have as much time to rehearse the music because now it's about the whole thing. So usually it's, again, another reason why it's really good to be able to play this stuff quickly. It's because you don't have unlimited time to learn this stuff. And on a big tour, you might have so many different departments. There's lighting guys, there's stage guys. It's a massive coordination effort. You're talking about over 100 people that are traveling on the road. There's carpenters, there's riggers. So it makes it so that you really got to be able to take care of what your job is and knock it out. Because your job is one of, the band is like one of like 7 different parts of the whole equation. So you need to be kind of automatic once you get to the big stage. So you're not going to have time to go, hey, what was that usually? You know what I'm saying? Because now it's about, okay, the explosion's going to be at, you know what I'm saying? Or
Yeah.
they were getting the choreography to match the physical stage. The choreography is the first time they're able to do that choreography on the stage. So they have to, man, those guys have a really tough job. They have to match a new setting and be able to create moves. They may have rehearsed in a soundstage that's not on the stage. With the musicians, it's kind of like not as tough in ways. We're rehearsing the music. Then we get to the big stage. It's still the music. Imagine the dancer rehearsing in a room. They're doing all the steps. They're trying to imagine what the stage will look like. But then they actually get to the stage and surrounded by all these props that they haven't seen before. They have to adjust to the new area that's impossible to calculate before they get there. And they have to learn that stuff on the fly in front of like the whole camp. So somebody slow doesn't get it quite as fast. It's a lot of pressure. So you really got to be on your game.
Can you talk a little bit about when you're on tour, how you, number one, maintain your chops, but number two, really how you maintain your physical and mental well-being being on the road for such long durations of time? Like, do you have any best practices that you observe when you're on the road?
I think at this point, for a keyboard player, it's important to, have something in your room. I didn't actually bring a weighted keyboard. It would have been really cool if I had done that. But I did bring, I brought a controller in my room, my computer set up so I could work on music. And I try to practice when I could. And, occasionally if we get to a city, I'd try to find a piano to play on if I'm worried about that. I try to work out some, at least, to sort of physically stay strong. I think it's important to have some balance. You want to enjoy yourself, to have some fun out there. You're going to exotic places. There's times that maybe you never know how long you'll be able to do this for. I think you need to live in a moment to some extent, yet also have some discipline where you're still, able to really execute on your gig and stay healthy. And everybody has a little different combination of how that goes down. But it's I'd say it's cool to have something in your room to practice with when you can, and listen to other stuff. When you listen to other music, it makes you able to execute your gig even better, because you always want to stay fresh with ideas. Because one of the things that people don't realize on these gigs, sometimes you might be called upon to come up with something. And what I mean by that is maybe they need a transition that's a little bit different that particular night. Maybe you're in a city that's like, hey, let's do a tribute to the local area. One time we were in South Africa, and during a costume change, we decided to play some Fela Kuti at an outdoor stadium. And it went over great. We just did it on the fly. But it was good to be familiar with that. But that's just like one example. Sometimes it might be in Brazil, and you want to play something that's local to like the place. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is like, it's still cool to listen to new stuff because you can incorporate that in the transitions and just your overall level of being relevant to the music. Because again, you are playing for a relevant pop artist that the whole world knows. So you want to keep your edge. And the pop artist wants you to keep your edge too. So you can always bring something to the table.
Can you talk a little bit about the experience of playing the halftime show for Super Bowl 51? I definitely encourage our listeners, whoever's checking this out, to go onto YouTube and look up Super Bowl 51. That's going to be, I think, L1 for the Roman numerals. And you sure enough can see Brockett stage left with his PianoArc just rocking out. So can you talk a little bit about what the rehearsals were like leading up to the Super Bowl?
Man, that was really intense. I guess what I could say about that is it's sort of a similar theme as what we've discussed before. The amount of time that you actually have to work on the music is never as much as you might need. So you have a limited window to get that together. It's extremely important to focus at that time because once that is over, it's about the entire show and you don't have that chance anymore. So what I would say is that the scope of a show like that, there's so many people involved that you really just got to be super professional and make everyone else's job easier. Think of all the communication that has to go on. The less focus they have to spend on the band, the better. Because it makes, you have the NFL, you have the entire organization for us and management and everything, and then you have the network. All have to communicate. Everybody's got ideas about what's going to go down. As the band, we just got to be flexible and execute whatever is told to us by the music director. Music director has to process all the information. He's hearing things from, like, what these guys have to do for these, like what Michael Bearden has to do, what Adam Blackstone has to do for these Super Bowl performances or any of these other large-scale performances, is be able to process contributions from a lot of different sources, break it down, and make a quick decision as far as what can be executed and be able to make them happy. It's a real testament to people's skill and delivery to be able to keep that together and being organized and being really time efficient. So I guess that's what I would say is that it's just another indication of being able to work quickly, but also being able to live in the moment, being able to really perform and enjoy the moment. It was a great moment. It was intense, man.
So
couldn't believe. And for me specifically, seeing my own instrument on the field,
yes,
I couldn't believe it.
Can you talk a little bit about what the actual show was like for you, what your experience was?
I think just one defining moment is that right after the show was over, and we felt that it was successful and instantly because it just felt the vibe. There's 5 of us in the band. And when we walk off, we're walking off the field. And we went to another section of the stadium in our room where we were. And we just all kind of like sat there and didn't really say much to each other. It was kind of like, whenever you have a real common goal that's really stressful or really great goal, that where there's a lot of pressure, and you're able to get through that together, it's like you're kind of like brothers for life. Is the way that I look at it. And the way that we just sort of processed that, we just all just sort of sat there and just kind of like, I'll speak for myself. I didn't want to be with anybody else other than those 4 dudes at that time. And we didn't really have to say much to each other, man. It was just like, it's almost like brothers who just went through a battle or something. It's just a magnificent moment that was so big for us. We were all kind of speechless. Yet we could bond because the other 4 guys in the room knew exactly what everyone else was feeling. So it was just like we processed that by just kind of like chilling out for a few minutes, saying kind of nothing, just living it, man. And it was dope.
That's an amazing story.
We let those endorphins come through inside our own brains. But we had the dudes who were there with us through the battle were right there with us. It was a really beautiful moment.
Hey, Brockett, can you maybe share a little bit about what it was like to play piano and keyboards on the Star is Born soundtrack?
Oh, man, that was a great experience. It's the first major movie I've been a part of, actually. And I was super thankful to do it. And it was great. And, you know, I got chills when I saw the movie in the theater. Because the piano part that I actually played on is I'll Never Love Again, which is the last scene of the movie. Pretty emotional scene. Yeah, that was a really busy time that year. We played the Super Bowl. We did Coachella, and she filmed in this. You know, she stars in A Star Is Born, and then has to do the soundtrack all in a very short amount of time. It's crazy how much was going on then. It was really cool to meet Bradley Cooper too. I felt he was that was a really good experience. We got a chance to perform on the Academy Awards with him, and he did an amazing job, man.
Yo, the dude can sing and the dude can play. Like, my goodness.
Yeah, he did it was fantastic. Just all I can say is I was just glad to be a part of that.
So, tell me more specifically about that moment. You're sitting in the theater, the lights are off, you're at the end of the movie, and you're hearing what you played come out of a major motion picture. Like, talk about never thinking you were going to get to the Super Bowl. What about never thinking about hearing yourself in a movie theater?
It was deep. It was really emotional for me. And it was a pretty cool moment of the movie as well. So, that was pretty surreal. And then after it was over, it was like, okay. There's guys that have played on like 300 soundtracks.
Yeah, that's true.
There's guys that have written 300 soundtracks. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, so it was like real caught up and happy in the moment. But then I realized that, you know, we're pros. This is what we do.
That's the truth.
But I was really glad to be a part of it.
Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier you're going to go shoot a music video with Danny Asadi. That's A-S-A-D-I. You guys have a new single out called Forever Chasing the Sun. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like making that single, or even what your plans are shooting a music video? This will air a week from today. If that helps inform you what to talk about.
So the person I collaborated with is a guy named Danny Asadi. He's a very gifted, young, multi-instrumentalist, really dope with like the Native Instruments drum machines and stuff like that. But also he blends, he's American, but his family is of Persian descent, and he blends the traditional Persian music with hip hop and trap in a way that's really unique that I've never heard before. And he plays the traditional Persian instruments and has a bunch of them. But his production skills in terms of EDM, guy knows what he's doing. He's done really well on Instagram. He's got like 400,000 followers, and he's like, he's really built a name for himself. So we linked up, and we kind of have a similar view towards things. And it was his idea to do a video on the beach. He's like, we got to do it. And he helped me carry that keyboard out there on the beach. We physically did it. And with a friend of his and a friend of mine, there's 4 of us that were working that day. Actually, the friend who helped me do it is this guy, Eric, who is part of the PianoArc team. He's an engineer also. And he's like such a cool dude, a good musician. So you always got to have people to help you out when you do this kind of stuff. And anyway, so yeah, we got a new video that actually he's helping me make a video. He's kind of directing it. And we're going to shoot that Monday. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but it's a little bit of a departure. I'm actually singing on it and I'm rhyming on it. Yeah.
Can you tell us the song that you're making this video for? What song is the video?
I'm taking kind of a bluesy vibe mixed with hip hop.
So this song has not been released yet.
No.
Exciting. Can you tell us about it, or you want to keep it under wraps?
I'm rhyming on it, and I'm sort of trying to blend some, grimy kind of blues with some grimy hip hop.
Whoa.
But I still make it sound kind of EDM-ish too. So I'm using some I suck as a singer, right? Let's be real. I can't sing. So I'm using some auto-tune, right? But it sounded pretty good. I'm pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it.
So you've already tracked the song, and now you're going to go shoot the video. Yeah. And do you have a release date?
Danny Asadi is going to mix it himself.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Do you have a release date set, or that's not in stone?
I haven't figured out the date yet, but it should be hopefully within a month or so.
Oh, that's exciting. Everyone, keep your eyes peeled. Go ahead and follow Brockett at Brockett Parsons. That's 2 T's in the Brockett. So you can check out that song as soon as it drops. Brockett, those are all my project questions for you. I've got some more specific practicing and lifestyle questions for you. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think we should cover before we move on?
Hey, man, I'm good. I will say this was kind of cool. What happened to me is I just got playlisted on a jazz playlist today.
That is cool.
Another collab that I did, with this guy named Gertie Beats. Just it's on a pretty cool jazz playlist now. I was like, nice. You never know when stuff goes down. It's pretty cool.
No, you don't. So, one thing that we actually spoke about you talking about is upcoming projects before we move on. Brockett, can you share a little bit about some upcoming projects you've got going on?
Right now, I'm really focused on my own thing. I've really worked on a lot of production, out of necessity. A lot of us musicians have had to figure out something to do, and so I really feel like I got a surprisingly good response on social media with some of the videos that I've done over the past couple of years. And I think it's a really good time for me to go for it and just try to make a statement and really deliver some content out there. Because I think everything is intertwined. When you make your own music, it provides opportunities to play with other people as well, because they see who you are in your own context. When you come in with a stronger position, or let's just say they're more aware of what your creative force is, you got to show it. And when you do it on your own, it's a good way of flexing that muscle, So it's good to play with other people, and it's also good to have some moments for yourself too. But they help each other out. And when you go to play with other people, because you focused on yourself, your creative game is at a higher level, and you have more to offer them.
Hey, Brockett, could you maybe tell me a little bit about any band or group projects you have coming up?
So I had the fortune to link up with and meet the rapper MC Search, who I've been a fan of for a long time, and he likes what I'm doing. Fortunately, I'm like super honored. So he had this idea to form a group, and he calls it the Co-Defendants. And so it's MC Search, it's me, and then he's also friends with Johnny Marr, the guitar player from the Smiths, and he's involved also, which is like, what an honor. It's a legendary group right there, and Johnny Marr's a legend. And then also from the group Crazy Town, that had a couple of really big hits back in the day, is a producer named Brett Epic Mazur, who is helping out with the production and engineering as well. So it's kind of like four guys coming together. There's some real potential for innovation there, I think. So I look forward to that.
That's cool. So right now you guys are working asynchronous. So you're just throwing tracks and ideas back and forth, trying to build up a library or a common vocabulary, as it were, and then you'll look at next steps.
Yeah, stay tuned for that, because I think the potential for something really good with that could be like serious. I'm excited for
that. I'm excited for you, and I'm also excited to be able to stick whatever you guys make into my ears and enjoy it that way too.
Yeah, cool, man.
So Brockett, let's talk a little bit about performance and creativity and lifestyle, because if we just practiced all day and we didn't eat and we didn't sleep, I mean, eventually you die because you didn't eat and you didn't sleep, even though you were practicing all day. So what we're going to talk about now is really just about what happens around the music to make the music happen, what methods or different choices you like to make to support the music. So, like, for example, what's your threshold of hours of sleep where you start to feel an impact on your creativity and performance? Like, is it at 5 hours? Is it at 6 hours? Is it 7? Like, do you need 8 hours and you're fine? 7 hours, you're fine? Where's that threshold where you start to feel an impact in the performance?
I generally like to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep if I can. I can deal with less for a day or two, but it definitely hits me. I'm not one of those guys that can, like never sleep and still be efficient. So I need some solid sleep, and I find that if I go for too long without getting some decent sleep, it affects my performance. Sometimes you're forced to.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But when I can get it, I happily accept the ability to sleep. It's important, man. Sleep matters.
Yes,
and they're doing all these studies with saying it has a lot to do with like your overall physical health. So
yes,
it's something I'm trying to work on a little bit myself to do it a little better.
It has incredible implications from what they're looking at. There's this one sleep scientist, Matthew Walker, I'm a big fan of, and he's talked about how like getting that 7 or 8 hours, it has some process in your brain where it clears this chemical called beta amyloid. And because you get that 7, 8 hours of sleep and you clear the beta amyloid, it actually increases the age you would get to before, if you were genetically programmed, for example, to get Alzheimer's, you would get it much later in life because you've slept properly. Whereas if you don't sleep properly for years and years and years, that beta amyloid builds up and you can actually find your way through genetics to that condition earlier. So like you're saying, the impacts for overall health with sleep are, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever used mindfulness or meditation to impact your creativity or performance?
I have not, but I actually think it's something that works really well for a lot of people. It's something that I'd be open to in the future. I really think as I get older, man, it's really important to be able to turn your mind off and be able to really focus. And I know a lot of guys that swear by that stuff. So I think it's really good to do that.
Do you find that when you're playing, the state that you get into might be comparable to that meditative state where it's this sort of in the moment focus but detached presence where you're just sort of mindful of everything that's happening?
It's really interesting. I never really thought about that. I don't know. It's hard for me to think. I suppose that has some validity. I think that's probably different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I certainly get a high from it, and definitely an adrenaline rush. So, maybe it is. That's so sorry to be so kind of lame with that, but I've just never nobody's really asked me that. So that's kind of a cool question. I like that.
Not lame at all. It's, for me personally, my experience is practicing, especially technique practicing, is very meditative.
I agree. You know what? You're absolutely right. Like practicing.
Yeah.
Just the routines and scales and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. And all of a sudden,
it does do that.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And then like time flies and you're like, wait, that was 2 hours, and you just sort of look up and you come out of it, and it's this state of flow. You're fully present, fully focused in the moment.
Yeah, man, for sure.
So you spoke a little bit about exercising when you're on tour. How do you find that exercise impacts creativity and performance for you?
I think it's important. I'm not like some killer exercise guru, but I do enough to stay in relatively decent shape, I think, for my age. And it's really worked well for me because, performing with a pop star is super physical. Or performing any kind of music is very physical. And so the better condition that you are physically, just going to make it easier to do that. But especially in the pop world, it's important to kind of try to still keep it together. It's like your job's on the line. Like your job is to be strong on stage and make a really good performance. So if you kind of like let yourself go, you're not really doing your job. Now, unfortunate things can happen no matter what you do, but I think it's good to try to do the best that you can to keep things together.
Do you ever have like a ramp up time when you're like, for example, doing a world tour where you're going to be, if you're playing the PianoArc, you're going to be standing up for whatever it is, 90 minutes, 2 hours straight. And in addition to that, you're being physical. I mean, Gaga's, like you said, an incredibly physical performer, and you need to mirror that energy to a degree to fit in with the groove of what's going on. Do you ever have like a ramp up time where you get in sort of fighting shape to go out on the road?
I definitely think so. I think the rehearsals. Say the rehearsals are for a couple of weeks or a few weeks. I think part of what I personally like, and I think, I personally like repetition, doing stuff a bunch of times to get something right. Some people might say if you do too much repetition, you might get a little burnt on it. But I like the repetition in the context of before a big tour, because it's not just about learning the music; it's actually building up your endurance. And I think our music director does a fantastic job of that, because I always feel after a couple of weeks of rehearsal, literally like I'm working out, and I feel just getting back into it. And even if you work out and are in good physical shape before that, playing is still different, like anything, right? You're standing up for a while, or you have adrenaline flowing in a different way. So you prepare the best that you can. It is good to be in good physical shape for that, and obviously to keep your playing in shape too. But there's the performance aspect of pop stuff. So it's important during rehearsal to play as if you're playing at the show. That means if you're giving like 100% and really rocking out, you're playing. There's moments in Vegas where we played these shows, the guitar players really rock out, and it becomes almost like they detune the strings. It gets like they drop down to like way down to like C or something, and like
metal.
it's like, but it sounds like some modern current metal because these guys really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But just the vibe to really play that,
Yeah.
with that kind of force, you got to play that all out at rehearsal. Because once you get to that stage and you've got the adrenaline of the crowd egging you on, and you want to take it to the next level, and like, I'm not moving around the stage, but those guys have to move around the stage. Nonetheless, I'm playing on a circular keyboard and people are looking at me, and there's a certain expectation, I think, of looking like I'm into the show. It's an entire experience. Yeah, that's important to rock out in rehearsal. Like, don't just play it, but play it like it's the show. Because when you play with that level of intensity, you can get tired really fast. I mean, there's been times, man, after like 3 songs, I'm winded because we rock out so hard. So it's good to practice that.
Yeah.
We go pretty hard in this band when it comes to that. Because the music that we're playing, these guitar players have been in the band a long time. And I really think they've developed a kind of sound where it's they've really blended some good kind of metal guitarist moments in some of the stuff that we're doing that really fits the music but just enhances it a bit. So it's powerful. But gets me amped. You know what I mean? I love it. These guys do a great job.
Yeah. How do people in your life support your ability to make music?
I come from a really supportive family. My mom's a musician, a brilliant musician. My brother plays the trumpet. They're super cool. And I've been fortunate to be around good people and good relationships where people have been supportive of what I'm doing. So just got to be around some good people. It is important, you know. Being a musician is not easy. So when you have people and friends and relationships and family that support what you do and just let you chill out, it can really help you reset.
And your friends and family providing you that time to reset, is that a conversation that you needed to have with them? Or is that just sort of the way, you know, there's a saying that you train everyone to treat you the way that you let. I'm messing this one up. You understand where I'm going with this, right? You know, if you always pick up your friend's phone call at 12:30 in the morning to drive them home from wherever it is, they're always going to call you at 12:30 in the morning. You don't pick it. Do you see what I'm saying? So did you have to have a conversation with everyone about you needing this artistic space to think and breathe? Or was that something that you just sort of created for yourself and became part of your social culture?
I think it happened naturally with me, but there might be times when you have to discuss, you know, the intensity that's going on in your life, make them aware of that. Maybe there's times when you need to turn off a little bit because what you're doing is very intense. But that's just part of just any relationship. And it's just trying to have good communication, you know, letting somebody know what you're going through. But it's just... if you're around good people and you're a good person yourself, you can work it out. But it's certainly a challenge. You know, I don't currently have a family myself, so it's a bit easier without a family. But when you have a family, it becomes even more important and more critical.
Brockett, do you define yourself as a musician, a human who plays music, or something else?
That's a really deep question. I guess I don't think that deeply about it. I guess I just call myself a musician, but I have heard, like, say, Herbie talk about this.
Yes. And
he says the importance of being a human being first. And I think it is good. He's absolutely right. He's totally right. He's so deep, man.
He is.
Like, he's so deep that he's on such a high level.
Yes, he is.
So that's a good level to aspire to, what he's talking about. But essentially, it's important to be a human being first. I agree 100%. Like, we're people. We're human beings that play music. He's right, especially this year. It just, this year just threw everybody upside down.
Let's talk a little bit about practice. Do you have a time or times of day that you prefer to practice?
Right now it's kind of I kind of change up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say I have a specific time of day. I just kind of do it when I'm inspired to do it. But I am a big proponent, and I think it's good for people who do have a time of day to practice. I think that's actually very effective, and I sometimes I become more efficient when I do that myself.
Like when you
It's hard
hold
to do
yourself
it
to
when
a
you're juggling
schedule?
bunch of stuff, but if you can, I think it's just part of overall organization, and it's kind of good.
So right now you're practicing when you feel inspired to practice. Now, what does that turn into? Does that look like you're practicing every day, or is it every other day? Are you practicing for an hour, 2 hours, or is it really just completely dependent on your mood and your state?
Well, it comes and goes right now because I'm doing so much production work and building my own music. So it's not necessarily like I'm practicing on chops all that often as much as I used to, but I might be practicing, like, learning how to add that plugin in, or just how did that dude get that 808 to sound like that?
Yes.
So it's more, in today's world, it's good to get some sonic stuff down. I've never really been that great at it. Now I'm trying to get a little better at it. It's a new world out here, and I've seen guys who can really mix and really engineer their own stuff have advantages. They don't have to have someone else do it. Now, doesn't mean that you have to do everything. But I think if you're trying to do stuff in today's world, I think it's good that the more technical knowledge you have right now can be really, really helpful.
I was just chatting today with Jason Camelio from Berkeley Global, and we were talking about this exact thing. He was talking about how students at Berkeley now, they have this whole system for them to like take video cameras and make content and all this stuff. And I think it's really important for people coming up to, you need to shed, you need to practice, you need to be good at your instrument. But for a lot of professional musicians, having the ability to edit video, having the ability to mix songs, master songs, those extra little skills will save you thousands of dollars, and then also liberate you to make more money using those skills at times when maybe your instrumental and musical skills, in the sense of an instrument, are not in demand.
It's a really, really interesting issue and question. There's a couple of different sides I view this, but I agree with you, and I agree with Berkeley that if the objective is to survive in the music business in today's climate, you're usually, and especially if you're a young guy coming up, actually the young guys get it because they grew up with it. They've had to adjust, right? That's why I hang out with Danny Asadi, man. He's got that together. He's 25. I'm trying to give his age away, but he's showing me stuff. So I've had to adjust personally. And I think it's very important. There's two sides to it, though, because it's like the constant sort of world that's been given now is that the opportunity, the really big opportunity, does lie in kind of building your own brand. Because if you do it to a large enough scale, you can make a living, right? There's fewer tours. COVID, there's no tours in COVID. But even without COVID, in general, the industry was going in that direction, where to get real financial power, you need to have some ownership of something, right? The days of when I talk to guys that might be just one generation before me, and some my age, I never really was in the mix at that time. But those days of really making a solid living playing as a studio musician, it's really difficult. There's some guys that can do, maybe some drummers can do okay, especially say in the gospel world, if they're doing a lot of recordings or country.
Or
But
Christian.
I'm saying the level of volume compared to like the golden age of our heroes, the days of, Steve Gadd and all that kind of stuff, or the Bacaro brothers and stuff, literally like doing hundreds of record dates. Those, it's rare for that. I don't even know if that's for anybody at this point. There's some guys that are doing some stuff, don't get me wrong. So anyway, but then you see like young guys developing their own brand, and occasionally one of them blows up on their own. And now you're expected, like, even if you want to get a gig, right? Everybody's checking your social media to see what you got going on. In a way, it's kind of like not cool, because it's sort of, it's bringing out the part of human nature that is forcing people to sort of brag about themselves, right? You kind of got to be a little bit self-absorbed to be good at this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can view it as sort of a sense of freedom, and it's necessary, you're just adjusting to the world. And it's really ironic, because I've kind of personally been never that guy who was like, ever felt that I'd be like good with like this social media self-promotion stuff, right? I just felt not so confident with that kind of thing. It's not really my style, not my nature. Like, I'm that type of dude who show up to a jam session and not be overly pushy to sit in, because I don't want to offend the guys on stage. Maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe the approach should be more confident in yourself and sit in and just play. You know what I mean? You got to like show people what you can do. That's been a challenge for me, right? But it's like I got this keyboard and I blew up on Instagram anyway, out of like luck, basically. So now social media has actually been something very good for me personally, and I see the power in it. So it's there's good and bad. But getting back to your question, apologies for being so long-winded.
Not at all. No apology needed.
I think that, being a young musician now, trying to figure out what to do, I can't knock somebody for being aware of those things that we mentioned. And I think it's more likely to have success overall if you can do some of that stuff. The more, the better. You can mix your own beats. Or even if you can't mix your own beats. I'm just trying to get to the point where when I send it to a rapper, even if it's not mixed, it's like good enough to inspire the guy where he wants to drop a verse on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because the standard is like so high to be able to hear something that's like really rocks through some speakers, that if something sounds like really whack in terms of like it's got like no bottom at all, can really throw the guy off. Now, real engineers would say, well, that's not really sounding good. Everything's super compressed. There's no dynamics. Certainly have a point. When it comes to hip hop and trap, you still got to have a certain punchiness if you want to compete today. And for young guys at Berkeley who are musicians to understand that, super important. But those are the guys who understand it better than guys like me. Guys of my generation have to adjust.
What is the maximum length of time, to bring us back to practicing? What is the maximum length of time for like a technique practice session for you? Like, how long can you sit down and really just shed technique before either you get saturated or you just need to take a break?
I personally think at this point, if I'm going some hard technique stuff, especially if I haven't been playing a whole lot, like more than an hour or two at one setting could actually do harm. Because I'm not trying to get tendonitis.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it's important, like working out. I think you have to build up to whatever your goal is. I'm saying at one sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, take a break. And if you want to keep on practicing, come back to it after a little bit. Some guys would even say you should take more breaks than that. So if your goal is to play 6 hours a day, I think it's important to take some breaks. I don't think I ever got to that point. I think I got to like the 3 or 4 hour a day point. But it's true. I mean, the more hours you put in, the better you're going to be. But it's about, quality of practice. And I don't really set an hour kind of goal. I think it's important to be honest with yourself when you know you're working hard and when you're not.
Mm.
If you really love what you're doing, you might not even know, like what you said, how much time is going by. If you're trying to transcribe or learn an Oscar Peterson solo, you could be sitting there 3 hours later and you're like, oh my God, that was 3 hours. And I only got like the first 3 measures.
Oh. When you practiced the most in your life, it was about that 4 hours a day. So like and again, I'm really drawing a line that there's a difference between practicing and playing. And I'm sure whenever I get Victor Wooten on here, he's going to tell me that there is no difference. I don't know if you've read his book, the Music Lesson, but he talks about playing should be practicing, practicing should be playing, which I think is right ultimately. But at that time in your life when you're at Berklee and you're really trying to develop your technique and your skills, still maximum was about 4 hours a day. You weren't pushing to those 6, 7, 8 hour sort of practice session things?
I don't remember exactly, but I do remember I was kind of like practicing whenever I could. It felt like I was just constantly practicing. Like, I don't remember setting an hour goal.
Mm.
There may have been days when I practiced more. I just think that I felt when I went too much that it started affecting me physically. And I was a little nervous about getting carpal tunnel or something or stuff like that. So I don't remember exactly, but I definitely put some hard hours in, man,
For sure.
without question. But I know guys that are like, of the level of you're talking about, people like that. And they put some serious hours in. And I put some serious hours in the past. I'm focusing a bit more on production right now. So actually just recently started kind of getting back into it.
Mm.
Started running some changes and working on Cherokee and stuff like that. Just kind of like pretty out of shape. But it's fun though.
Yeah.
I always love doing it.
I've always found that working in production and mixing and mastering is such a artistically and mentally rigorous process, especially at the beginning when you're sort of trying to figure out mixing and mastering. I'm not saying you're at the beginning at all. You're an incredibly established producer, but the artistic rigor of it is such that when you finish, whatever it is, 2, 3, 4 hours working on a track, you don't want to go practice. Like, that's it. Like that's my art for the day. Like, checkbox.
Generally speaking, yeah, like I chill after I do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For sure. I do think though, like when you're like a young dude in your teens and early 20s, if you have the energy to do it, do it.
Mm.
Go, because that's like the time in your life when you can do it. And at that time, when I got to Berklee, I did work extremely hard at that time, and a few years after Berklee. And I mean, even now, like if my job is playing, one time I got called to. I mean, I've had to do some crazy stuff, like learn stuff really quickly. One time, I had to try to learn Beethoven's Symphony Pathétique quickly.
Okay. How quickly is quickly?
Like I had to make something presentable, not like the whole thing or anything, but I had to make something presentable. I won't be specific, like who called me.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I had to do something where I could actually play it on video, right? And in like a day.
Oh no! Say it ain't so. All right. So what goes down?
So so it was no way I was going to do the whole thing. Like
right.
They were like, we don't need the whole thing. So I shedded that for like 14 hours. And I happened to be at my mom's house at the time, who was a brilliant classical musician. And so I started working on it. She's like, no, your feel's all wrong. She said, do it like this. And so I took like a lesson from my mom for like half an hour. And then I went and shattered it until I basically passed out.
Oh my God.
So I got like, I got like the beginning slow part, okay, and then like a little bit of the fast part. I ended up not having to actually do it. But my mom was like, well, you learn how to play some Beethoven, though.
Yeah, I know, right?
And so I ended up being able to use that on a live show, though, at a different time.
That's
so
amazing.
I still was able to use what I got from that. I learned a lot in one day.
Yes. It sounds like it.
I'm not saying I was killing it or anything. You know, for any real classical players out here, I mean, I know what it takes to really play that, but I did a decent job under the circumstances. I was ready.
You were ready to go.
But I was freaking out, man. I literally practiced that until I had nothing left.
Man. That's a wild story. Thanks for sharing that. It reminds me of, you know, the bassist Leland Sklar?
Man, I was just thinking about him and some of the stuff I was talking to you about. I saw him play in Australia when we were on tour. James Taylor was there the night before we were there.
Oh my gosh.
So we managed to be able to go to the show. And I saw him with James Taylor at the arena in Australia. And then we played the next night.
Wow.
But he was so awesome live. Anyway, that dude's the man.
He is the man. I was bringing him up because there was this one time like Toto needed a bass player and they called him, I think it was like, it might have been 4 days or 3 days before they went on tour. And he learned the entire show in like a day. And you look at a guy like that and you're like, it's this savant level of like, he's like a music sponge. It's insane.
I had to learn, I subbed for Tony Braxton, and I had to learn an entire set in very short notice as well. And the music director, Rob Lewis, was kind enough to go over the stuff with me beforehand and did everything that he could to give me the tools to be successful. But I had to hold up my end of the bargain, which was literally like shed that stuff 14 hours a day for those 5 days. And the gig went well. But it was like I had to learn stuff super fast. So it gets intense out here, man.
Absolutely. Could you talk a little bit about now as you're sort of coming out of this pandemic hibernation that we've all been in and ready to get out and play some shows and start shooting music videos? Can you talk a little bit about how you're segmenting your practice time?
You know, I'm still working on that, you know, because I'm trying to, you know, do my own music and, you know, budget time to practice and then budget time to write the songs, budget time to do the videos, budget time to practice on the actual PianoArc itself, budget time to do content on that keyboard as well, because I think it's important to keep that going. So I just take it one day at a time.
Have you ever injured yourself playing music? Like, have you ever gotten to the point where you almost got a tendinitis and you had to back off? I've given myself carpal tunnel and tendinitis like twice.
I've never, fortunately, never had a seriously bad situation, but I've definitely felt some pain sometimes. But when I do, I try to listen. And your body's pretty intuitive. And I think it's important to not like play through intense pain on a regular basis, because that you're just waiting for something to happen. It's your body telling you to maybe chill a little bit, because they're repetitive muscle injuries. Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've never had a really bad injury when it comes to music. Never something enough where I've had to miss a gig or something.
Brockett, if money was no object, would you still practice?
I think I would practice more.
Really?
Yeah, because I wouldn't be worried about trying to make a living. So then I just want to be dope as a player. Just like shit all the time.
Okay, so would you be shedding or would you be playing? Or are we making a distinction between the two?
I'd be doing both. If I was like
Wow.
rich,
Yeah,
and I
money's
didn't
not
have to worry
object.
about making a living, and I just wanted to be good as a
Yeah.
player, I'd just be shedding I'd just be practicing and playing all the time.
Wow.
But maybe not all the time because I still like writing and producing music too.
Mm.
So I still divide it up. But um, one of the things that I go through, if I'm trying to make a trap beat, right, there's a certain discipline that's involved with to like while I'm making the beat to not, if I'm trying to come up with a little riff, it's like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Then it gets like, what if I did this chord? Oh, that chord becomes a little bit more complex. Within 45 seconds, I'm practicing Spain. And I played it for like an hour. There's no trap beats made.
No trap was made, indeed.
So that's what I'm saying. When you're like a musician and like a dude who's into hip hop and you're trying to balance the two, the guys that we're competing with on the production level, many of them, they do this full time. They're really into making drums. They're really into chopping samples. That's their instrument. So all they care about is making that sound hot. And it's joy for them. So it's a real, that's why I don't underestimate these guys, man. They come up with some great stuff. So but that's a challenge is if you're a musician and you like playing a whole bunch of stuff, if you're actually trying to get something done, sometimes you got to focus. But you know what? One thing that's been very helpful to me recently is that when I'm doing hip hop production, I used to do stuff where I would do a beat and kind of like do an idea, not really finish it, and just like go back to it. I force myself to make or try to make one beat that's presentable to somebody. It might not be mixed, it might not be that dope, but good enough where I'm ready to like make a bounce and send it to some rappers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I want to feel like I accomplished something. Because these kids that are making beats, some of them do like 10 beats a day or whatever. You know what I mean? It's about having some volume. Rappers expect that. And it's a numbers game. And it's hard to just do like, like one track a month and like be successful at this. I'm not saying it's impossible, but in today's world with all the technology that's involved, it's expected that you make a bunch of ideas when it comes to rap and trap, I think. So I think the process of finishing a beat is important. I try to force myself to do it. That means not constantly trying to reinvent a melody. If I got a pretty good melody and a decent groove, I try to put myself in the position of a 17-year-old in their bedroom making a beat from the sample. It's like I'm not going to add any more music now. All right? What I need to work on is how to make those drops. How to make that form sound good with a simple melody, but how do I still make the variation in that? How are we hearing these beats on these trap records that are repetitive, yet they're not actually repetitive? Because there's like something changing every 4 bars. It might not be the melody, but the hi-hat drops out. Or the 808 changes slightly, you don't hear it. Or there's like a weird effect on the snare on the second verse. Or there's a drop on the 5th bar of the second verse. Right? I've had to work on that because I'm not so fast. The more beats that you do, the more quick, the faster you become. And those become easier. And this is what I see when I see a guy like Danny Asadi working. He's really fast at the technical side of things. So he can actually make more stuff because he's not, if I'm sitting there trying to like filter a build and I don't know how to do it and I got to like look at a bunch of YouTube tutorials to figure out how to do it, I'm going to spend like the whole day figuring out how to do that. But I got to go through it.
Yeah.
So you got to put time in on that production, man.
When you're saying it's a numbers game, you mean that like if you make 10 beats in a day and you send those 10 beats to a rapper and the rapper only likes one of those 10 beats, is that the numbers game you're talking about?
What I'm saying is it seems to be that the world is so fast that, and again, I'm still kind of getting back into it myself. You know, kind of like got different hats on. But I've dabbled on the outside of this production thing for a long time. And it does seem that whatever modest success I've had has generally been when I've been on a productive content creating, vibe. When I'm really putting out a bunch of stuff, you're more likely to come out with something hot, is what I think. Because I think that hip hop is so intuitive that it's hard to take something that sounds like okay and make it hot by tweaking it forever. It can be done. But I think it's such a guttural thing. It's going to reach people or it's not. So if you spend some time on a track and then you kind of like finish it, just kind of like let it go, you're more likely to come out with something hot by doing something else. It's like that. When you finish that, then you're like, okay, that's done. I got it. Now let me do the next thing, be fresh. So when you come up with 10 fresh ideas, one of those ideas being like really able to reach somebody, you've increased your odds. I mean, there's different ways of looking at it, right? I mean, some producers don't do that. And it's different for everybody. But I found for me, and what I see others doing, that a lot of the producers that are current and viable in today's industry have a lot of beats under their belt. Just the process of finishing a beat makes you better.
Yes.
Because you got to finish it for somebody to hear it. And a lot of these guys have done like thousands of beats, man. So they've done 1,000 mixes, 1,000 arrangements, 1,000 finished drum patterns. So now if they're in the studio with a rapper or something, and a guy's like, hey, let's start out with a vibe, they can knock something out quickly and keep the vibe going and the interest in the room.
But that's also comparable to someone pointing at you in an audition and say, play, Brockett, and then you play. It's the same thing, just with different instruments through different mediums, right?
I really do believe that. Yeah. I mean, the music of today might be way less complex as an average when it comes to harmony and melody. I love Rick Beato, and he talks about this all the time. And I love his YouTube channel. He's so dead on with that. But what I would say for the new generation is that what makes a lot of the new generation tick, though, is sound and vibe. And so what maybe the young guys are lacking, in some of them, in terms of melodic complexity, sonically, dudes really know it, like have a real edge. Being able to separation, working with the technology, being able to finish complete ideas, and just go for it. And so let's take a guy let's take a super successful producer. Say, I don't know his workflow, I don't know him personally, but let's just say somebody like Timbaland, all right? I can't imagine how many beats that guy's done. I just don't know. A lot. That's all I can say.
A lot, indeed.
So I got to say, this is a guy who's like, it's just one example. Scott Storch. I can name these guys that have done a large volume of hits. Their ability to work quickly and come up with hot stuff on the spot, because they've been doing it for so long. That's like their instrument. That's kind of like a jazz musician being able to just destroy giant steps, or being able to knows, or a guy, a jazz musician knows like 3,000 standards. Okay, when you're playing Autumn Leaves, if you have some vocabulary, you can sound good on Autumn Leaves. But can you show up to Smalls in New York City and be able to sound good on 1,000 tunes that are thrown at you, and be able to understand all the turnarounds that go along with different cities playing certain things, and being really comfortable when they're changing keys, and really being able to destroy that every time. That's the level that those guys are on, right? So these guys are comparable in their field at doing the same thing, because they have to be, because everybody's trying to do it. So they're the ones that are at the top. Generally speaking, the quality does rise to the top. You have exceptions, and you have people that may have gotten a couple of hits out there who maybe haven't gone through that. But the names that you've really heard that have lasted, it's not a coincidence. They've put their time in on their craft.
So speaking of craft and creativity, do you take any steps to stay creative or maintain or protect your creative space?
I think it's good just to like balance life and just have fun, watch some movies, whatever. Take a walk outside. As I said, work out. Want to play some basketball, as long as you don't hurt your hand, go do it. You know what I mean?
Brockett, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You can find Brockett on Instagram. That's BROCKETT PARSONS. You can find him on Twitter at Brockett Parsons and Facebook, Brockett Official. His new single is out now with Danny Asadi, and you can also check out all his amazing music wherever you get your music. Check out Brockett Parsons. Brockett, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, Dan, thank you very much for the invitation, and I love what you're doing, man. And good luck to the future.
Thanks so much.